Here.
Mr. Van Oz? Here. Mr. Mann is excused. Mr. Stoll? Here. Mr. Fulbaum?
Here.
Item number 3 on the agenda is additions and deletions to the agenda. Any additions or deletions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Rathel,
Support.
support by Mr. Fulbaum to approve the agenda as submitted. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Item number 4 is a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of December 16th, 2013. And those came by email the other day.
Correct. I apologize. I left the hard copy sitting on the printer downstairs.
Yep.
So we can wait till next time to approve them if you want a hard copy, or if you guys all viewed them in an email, you can approve it that way.
I had a chance to review mine. I have no questions.
I move approval as submitted.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Rathel, support by Mr. Fulbaum to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of December 16th, 2013 as submitted. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Item number 5 is the financial report for January 2014. And included in your packet is the report that shows that our revenue is budgeted at $724,043. We are currently 83% through our fiscal year, and our year-to-date revenue is $645,448, which takes us to 89% of our budget. Our expenditures are budgeted at $724,043, and again, we're 83% through our budgeted, or through our fiscal year, and we spent $701,383 for just under 97% of our budget of our expenditures. Our capital reserve as of January 31st is $645,863, and our past due summary as of February 10th is $4,414, and our pending legal action / settlement plan is at $15,971. So with that, Mike, is there anything you want to point out as it relates to the January budget report?
Just on the expenditures, obviously the expenditures are kind of falsely high right now because we're still waiting on the reimbursement for our runway repairs. That's $95,000. So that will bring the year-to-date down quite a bit when we do receive that. I do hope to probably finish in the fiscal year out with about a $50,000 surplus, is what, 45 to 50, depending on how our projects on Building 61, 62 play out. I'm currently still working on the pending legal action. We may try to take a route, as we previously discussed, with like a collection agency and see if we can have some better results than with our legal department. I will be having a new intern who I'll probably be putting that project on. He's starting Monday.
Is the payment that we're expected to get, is that late? Or is it the reimbursement, is that behind?
It's held up a little bit right now in the state. I've been in touch with their finance department. The check was cut and mailed last week, so I'm not sure why we haven't seen it yet. I need to touch base with them again. I'll do that tomorrow and make sure it's still en route.
So we're expecting that?
I'm expecting it before your fiscal year end.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Rathel.
I think it was Mr. Manns that had mentioned a while back on the pending legal action in the settlement plan that we should look into a collection agency. And I'm just wondering if that had any legs with it, or are we looking into that? Is that a good idea?
Mike, any?
Yeah, that's what
that's what you mentioned.
Yeah,
right?
previously
Okay.
we're discussing. I'll put the intern on that and see if we can have some better luck with it. It may be a good idea. I'm gonna still get with the accountant and see if we can write some of this off as bad debt expense and continue to pursue the past due amount before the fiscal year end. And then I do hope to have better results with that, though.
Do you know off the top of your head, Mike, what is the longest amount that's past due that's on this list? Like what's the oldest past due on here?
Thomas James Photo and Rush Fire Brick are both pretty close. I would say Thomas James is probably starting back to 20 months ago.
Okay.
Mike, we got a legal judgment on that, didn't we?
No, we were in
On Rush?
on Rush. We did,
All right.
and he has not followed. He made 2 payments to the airport and then stopped payment. So we've tried to go back after him, and I'm hoping maybe a collection agency will have a little bit better of a turnaround.
Does he still have some of his equipment on the airport grounds?
He does currently. That yard's still being transferred over to a different tenant name, but he does have personal property that was in the building that was past due rent in the storage yard currently on the airport.
Any idea what the value is?
No, I don't have an estimated value, but there are some larger pieces of equipment in there. There's a forklift and some bigger items that would have a value on it.
Mr. Van Oz, can we confiscate that as?
Well, I'll talk with the attorney. I know he's in arrears with his personal property tax also, so we may have an avenue there. I'll check into it.
Okay. If either you or Mike can give us an update at our next meeting about that. Mr. Rathler?
I just did a Google search on collection agencies, and a bunch of them in Michigan showed up, and seems like they're all, no collections, no charge. They take a fee depending on how many outstanding debtors you have and volume, I guess, but it seems like it's a pretty easy process.
Yep, it's an easier process. They only take a fee if they collect, and it's no fee to use them. And I would say that the legal fees we're paying would probably be similar to what the collection fee would be. So we'll try both, and if you have luck with either one, it should equal out.
Well, I think that it's probably gonna be less, because if you go with an agency, you're not gonna have any time into it. If we go with a legal, filing on this, then there's a lot of your time that's, involved. So, I don't know, these things have been hanging out. We got almost $16,000 worth of bad debt that we're not able to collect. So let's just send an agency after them.
Is that something we have the right to just choose who we want, or does that gotta go through a bidding process? Do you know?
No, I wouldn't think so.
Mike, if you could get on that maybe this week sometime and see what you can find out.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions on the January financial report? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to receive and file. Motion by Mr. Fulbaum,
Second.
supported by Mr. Stoll, to receive and file the January 2014 financial report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Item number 6 is the manager's report. 6A is Vehicle Development Corporation update. Mike?
Just want to give the commission a brief update that our new tenant across the street is starting to move along nicely. 2 weeks ago, they completed their first truck, switching it over to right-hand drive. I did have the pleasure of going for a ride in it. It's a very clean swap that they do. Dash, everything looks very OEM original. They did just win the legal battle, and the trucks are released, so they've received about 50 trucks over in the building, so they're a little bit crammed in there until we can provide them a fence. I've lent them some room in one of our hangars to park a couple of them safely until they can shift things around in the building. And we're continuing to move forward with our projects there. We've completed the office demolition. There was a partitioning wall that was in there from Homeland Security that we had to demo. That's been completed, and we reopened the door back up into the bathroom for them. The 2 projects we're currently still working on are filling in the industrial pit that's in the building and the fencing bids, which we have on tonight's meeting. Right now, the pit we ran into a little bit of a hiccup with. I had one quote that was pretty far out of left field. It was for about $22,000 to environmentally clean it. I went back through the company that we originally used to pump that pit down when Iverson vacated. It's Usher Oil Company, and they own their own treatment facility, so it's going to be a fraction of the cost through them. I was told in an estimate to be under $10,000, so I'm thinking it's going to be right around $7,000. That's what we've budgeted for the upcoming year. So we're moving forward. Some of the progress is getting slowed down. If you remember, we did a 3-month window for our upgrades to the building and their upgrades to the building before they start owing rent in April. They've requested that I slow down some of our upgrades that we were required to do because of all the trucks in the building and all their operations going on, so.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Rathel?
isn't it possible to go back after Iverson for the cost of this environmental cleanup?
I don't believe so due to the time that's passed. I can look, I will look and see, but I don't.
I'm not so sure that ever ends, you know.
Mr. Rathel, I did check into that with the attorney, and being as though Iverson never owned the building, the contamination in that building belongs to us.
Okay.
I did check with it, because I thought the same thing after I heard your comment. And because we were leasing the building, and he went bankrupt, so there would be nothing to go after there, but the grounds in the building is ours, and we have no recourse with Iverson.
And we had Usher Oil already do the testing because it's been longer than 3 years since the pit's been last tested. You know, some of the chemicals and the cutting oil that's left in there, they say the chemical makeup can change, so we have to have it retested. That was about a $500 fee, but we've already done that, and we're moving forward to get an estimate from Usher.
Is that in any way holding up vehicle development from doing anything in the building that they
No, and
want to do?
they, like I said, they've asked me to postpone that being one of them until they can kind of get their facilities sorted out, because they have so many trucks in the area. We would not be able to do that project in there currently, so we postponed by a couple of months.
Do you have any idea, Mike, how many people are employed there right now?
Currently, I would say approximately 12 to 15. And then they have the owners and higher up in the company in from Australia, and then they also had one of their buyers in from Singapore today. So kind of fluctuates day to day, but on a normal basis, 12 to 15 right now.
In any idea what it's supposed to be at full operation?
Lenny, I know in one of our prior meetings stated up to 50. So I think they'll settle around 35 or 40 when they're in full operation.
Okay. So they're not quite halfway there, but
Yep.
they're getting there. Okay.
I do have a little concern, and maybe we should think about putting this into our leases. If a tenant could come into our building and have a environmental mishap, oil, something goes down the drain, are we always responsible for that? I mean, we're gonna have 100% of the cleanup cost? I
It
think
would
that we need to, look into that a little more.
If it's not specified in our lease, we're pretty liable for it. And you're absolutely right, it's something we've never even dealt with before, but it's a good idea that going forward, that environmental issues, not just spills and hazmat conditions, but anything that's left in the building is a responsibility. Of course, I'm not sure it made a lot of difference with Iverson because they went bankrupt anyway, but I'm not sure that, but we might have been able to go after the Monroe Bank and Trust forced bankruptcy, so could have probably gone through them if we had to, so. But we have no option if it's not in our lease. You're right, John. You're absolutely right. We need to look at that.
And I'm kind of in process of doing that now. If you also remember, the tenant had a requirement to do a baseline environmental study. I have to check and make sure our lease will comply with that. Maybe we can do an addendum to the lease, but we're doing one of the requirements was a baseline environmental study. So basically, the tenant can look at the building and say, okay, we know these concerns exist. Anything after that that's left in the building would be cost from us. That way we know what's cost from the tenant and what's not. I did win an EPA grant for that study, so we won't have to pay for it. But that'll at least give us a baseline of, we already know what's present in the building, and then if we want to do another one when the tenant moves out, or when we get a new tenant, we can compare.
But it sounds like if we don't have anything in the lease that states their responsibility, if we have a baseline at day one, and then we reevaluate when they leave, if there's nothing in the lease that says any change, any environmental issues that exist, that they're responsible for. So what does it matter, really, a baseline or a study after they leave? No,
I agree that the lease needs to state something like that, and maybe we'll have to do an addendum with a clause in it, but I'm saying the baseline at least that's how you discover if there's been a new environmental concern in the building when the tenant moved out or when the tenant moved in. That way we can't come back, if there's a environmental problem in the flooring or on the concrete outside, and say we don't do an environmental study now, and in 2 years we do it when the tenant's leaving, we can't prove that that was caused by the tenant. So we need one now and then be able to do it again after when we move out.
My point is, if it's not specified in a lease that they would be responsible for it, it doesn't matter.
I agree.
Because we'd be responsible for it.
Mike, why don't you look at the lease and see, it seems to me that we had some type of boilerplate language about environmental in there, but could you look at the lease, our sort of regular lease that we have, and see what that language, and maybe if, what you find, if you could email to all of us so we could read it. Anything else, Mike, on the update?
Nope.
Any other questions or comments for Mike? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 6B, which is the proposed 2014-2015 budget.
Set up on everybody's screen.
That picture's on our screen.
Okay, the presentation, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. I'll just walk through it and kind of go over any major changes or anything that stands out. You guys can stop me anywhere along the way and with questions. So this is our proposed 2014-2015 fiscal budget. Fiscal year begins in April. And this is due, the township board's going to approve it in March before April 1st. Budget overview, we're projected to have a balanced budget for the fourth consecutive year in a row. This current budget that I have prepared anticipates the same fuel arrangements we currently have with our FBO. I budget pretty conservatively, so our FBO is still planning on going out of business in the next month or so. I'd still budget for a fuel arrangement on the off chance they continue in business, which they've had some delays, so it could continue on for a while. So I did budget for that conservatively. It anticipates the same revenue we've been generating from Building 63, operating as a storage facility under Dave's Hot Rod Garage. We don't currently have any increases in hangar rent budgeted in there. And then most of the rental rates on our land leases and building leases increase annually based on the CPI index, Consumer Price Index. And our accountant calculates that. It comes out of just a table, and it's based on the Metro Detroit area. Some of our leases are scheduled increases, but I'd say 75% are Consumer Price Index based. And then all the expenses are budgeted on previous year trends and year-to-date actuals. So I normally go about 4 or 5 years back and look at the trends. And then all the employee costs and benefits that are in the budget come right out of the accounting department. They're just passed through to me for budgeting. So overall summary, last year we had a budget revenue and expenses of $724,043. This year we're up to $828,160. That's primarily due to our new tenant in the Commerce Park. I am projecting a 18% drop on the airfield revenues. We'll go through that when we get there. It's mainly due to the two tenants we had that are currently, one is moved out and one is expected to. That's the FBO there, but we can get to that when we get to the airfield revenues. The Commerce Park revenues are up 59%. Again, that's mainly due to our new tenant. The airfield operation, the expenses are up 11%. We can go into the detail there. And then the Commerce Park expenses are up 39%. That's mainly due to our new tenant and some of the costs that we're going to incur in getting them into the building. So overall, our budget has increased 14% from last year, or $104,117. There's just a graphical representation. Fuel sales, I remain the same as last year. When I'm looking at our trends, they've been right around 164, 165,000. Seems to be kind of a safe spot for us. This year, it's a little slow. I'd say we're probably going to finish right around the $164,000 range, but I would attribute that to a very cold winter that we've been having, a lot of snow. The fuel farm expenses are pretty similar. The credit card fees are increasing a little bit, but everything else is pretty much the same across the board. We do allocate salaries and insurance and dental and things like that to the fuel farm.
Mike, the credit card fees, is that a function of the credit card companies?
That's correct.
Okay.
The health insurance is down a little bit because I take the buyout and do not accept health care through the township. I'm covered under a different plan for a few more years. So we save the airport some money through that route. We did switch over to a new telephone company. Some of their fees are higher. So we budgeted another $500 in that department. The insurance and bonds are going up. They expire, I think I had it here. I think I included that in the back of your packet there. Our bond payment will be completed and they'll stop in 2018. The principal increases by $5,000 every year, but our interest is going down. There's a graphical analysis of it. The fuel farm normally operates a little bit of a loss every year after we allocate all the employee salaries and benefits to it. And then the 2013, 2014, and all these graphs will denote activity through January 31st of 2014. And then the 2014, 2015 is what our projected amount is for this coming budget year. The Commerce Park revenues, the rent income, you'll see most of that first category there increased by 1.51%. That's pretty much on par with the consumer price index was 1.57%. So it's pretty much a straight increase. I think we had one tenant in there that when they renewed their lease, negotiated no increase for 1 year to stay on board. So I think that's why we lost the 0.06. The rent income from the buildings greatly increased again due to our new tenant down there, Building 6162 Vehicle Development Corp. It's a $154,000 bump. So we saw a 76% increase in that department. Everybody else I think there's a few on there that are on a scheduled increase, but everybody else in there is also consumer price index based.
Mike, at our next meeting, can you give us a summary of when all of these leases expire? I don't know that we've seen that in a while, and I just would like to review that.
I believe it's the last page in your financial report, I think might have some of that on it.
Okay.
But we can look, I'll put something together for you.
I have a question for you. If between now and the board meeting, we have a windfall of $100,000 in revenue, someone decides to rent another building, and you project that for the year, the fiscal year, what would happen on the expense side?
We would allocate it somewhere. I mean, if we wanted to put it towards capital purchases in the future or something, we can do that.
Do you allocate expenses to the capital reserves?
We can.
Is that in this budget?
No, it's not.
Okay, thank you.
I would assume there would be quite a bit of cost to get the new tenant or whoever online too, so there'd be increased, if it was in the Commerce Park, we'd have an increased budget for repairs and maintenance and things like that. But it would probably go towards a capital purchase that we need. On the Commerce Park expenses page here, everything else is fairly similar to last year. There's no major changes in that. Again, the health insurance went down a little bit. The professional services at the top here, I probably will remove that from the budget. That was when we had Homeland Security in that building, in Building 6162, and we had to provide plowing and janitorial and some other services to them. So that'll eliminate $1,500. The insurance and bonds went up again. That was just due to our bond payment increasing by $5,000. The property taxes that are in there are part of our negotiated lease with the tennis center. They pay us an annual rent, and then also in that, we're responsible for their end of the property taxes to the township. And then the bad debt expense obviously will increase based on our overall revenues and expenditures. It's 0.4% of our revenue.